I made an observation that black men and boys need to see positive images of themselves and need to have their stories told. And so, therefore, I had an obligation to create it. And from there, the Black Man Can was born in 2010. And so, over the last 13 years, I've just been cultivating a mission to celebrate, educate, and inspire, to create and amplify um, what it is that we do in all the different spaces and places that we walk in and all the contributions that we're making into the world.
Welcome to the Man of Honor podcast, where we help men just like you win the biggest game of all in life, love, and family. Your host, Ed McGlasson, has been coaching and speaking to men for the last 40 years in 14 countries. He's a 5-year veteran of the NFL, a pastor, life coach, best-selling author, and has been married for over 40 years, blessed with 5 adult children, 10 grandkids, with 3 more on the way. And now, here's Ed.
Well, welcome to the Man of Honor podcast, and I got a really special guy. I've been watching him online. If you've been on Instagram, and you've probably seen a number of incredible just shorts, videos, just a message just come. It's called The Black Man Can. And I'm so grateful to have him on our show. He's a number of things, right? He's a visionary leader, he's a social innovator, educator. He's a founder and chief visionary officer for the Black Man Can, Inc., award-winning nonprofit that amplifies the stories of what Black men and boys can do. He's established this group called Mentor, network of over 500 Black men. Gosh, I love that. And I could just talk about all the stuff he's done, but I'd rather just let the brother speak. So, man, welcome, Brandon, to our podcast. I'm so honored to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here. Thank you for thinking enough of the work that we are attempting to do in communities across the world to be able to share. I'm thankful and I'm grateful.
Well, I'll tell you a little story on myself. You'll understand my heart. When I was growing up, my dad was in the Navy. My real dad was killed in action, so I never knew my father, birth father, and my stepfather raised me. But we were in Key West, Florida, and there was a young Black boy who came out for our all-white baseball team. And his name was Papa. He batted cross-handed because when he was smaller, he couldn't get anybody to teach him how to play baseball, so he did it on his own. And I remember seeing him come out for the team. Guys were making fun of him. And I walked over to him and I said, "Hey, man, we're going to be best friends. We should come over to my house." And, I was about 10, 11 years old. Matter of fact, he became the number 1 hitter on our team. He hit that ball, and we became friends. And so it started just this thing in my heart, way before Christ came into my life, where all of a sudden he put these exceptional men, I call them, that just have a greater ability to get suntan than me. And just the extraordinary calling life that they have, and yet it's a known tragic statistic of how many African American families, their dad, there's not a guy out there going, "Hey man, you can do this." And it's like when I saw your stuff, I just went, man, this guy has a voice that he is speaking into a culture that's demonized them, isolated them. Racism is affected, so many things where there's this voice saying, "Oh, hey, wait a minute. You can do this. And I feel like you're one of God's modern day Elijahs who is empowering men and calling them, back to their kids, to their families, to their wife, to say, hey, man, I got some news for you. You can do this. You can do this. So how did this come about? What's the genesis of Brandon and to be this kind of guy? What happened to you that just kind of unlocked this moment?
I think there's a few different moments that I've experienced in my life. If I had to go back, one definitely had my mom, my grandmother, my grandfather like pour into me. But a moment that I actually wrote about when I was in college that was the first like really turning point for me was in eighth grade. In eighth grade, at the end of the year, there's a yearbook, and in the
Oh
yearbook, there's
yeah.
the pluralatives where you will, be voted on, best smile, best looking, those things, right? And so
Yeah.
in eighth grade, we get into the superlatives that we're going to be voting, and there was one superlative that meant the most to me, and it was best looking. So I went on a campaign to all the girls in my eighth grade class to be like, hey, when you pick best looking, you should pick Brandon.
Me, Brandon.
So then the superlatives come out, and I didn't get best looking.
Oh man.
I was devastated, and I went home and was really upset, frustrated. Told my mom, and then my mom though was like, "Brandon, but you got the best superlative," and I was like, "No, I didn't, because I didn't get best looking." And she said, "You got you got the best one, which was most likely to succeed."
uh,
And at that was a moment, a turning point for me because I'd always been somebody that maybe was service oriented, and I just worked hard and tried to get my work done. But my peers looked at my character. My peers looked at how I carried myself and said, of all the young men in the class, like this is the one who's going to be the one to do well or do something great in life, right? And I've held on to that to help formulate who I am, and then again I was actually selected that in high school as well. Again, and that I didn't campaign for anything in high school. I just was selected for that as well, and so I've had these moments where me just being me and allowing my character to develop in a way that people see me as somebody who is going to be a leader, somebody who's going to give back, who's going to care about the community. I think
mm,
all of that I've carried with me, and then into college, having my experience at Morehouse, which was phenomenal. That plays a role in being at Morehouse around Black men and boys, and hearing our stories and our narratives, and starting a mentoring program on the east side of Atlanta. And so what this all leads up to is that I read a quote by M.K. Asante, and he says, once you make an observation, you have an obligation.
that's a
And so
boy, that's true.
I made an observation that Black men and boys need to see positive images of themselves and need to have their stories told. And so, therefore, I had an obligation to create it. And from there, the Black Man Can was born in 2010. And so, over the last 13 years, I've just been cultivating a mission to celebrate, educate, and inspire, to create and amplify what it is that we do in all the different spaces and places that we walk in, and all the contributions that we're making into the world.
That's powerful, man. Tell me a little bit about your dad. You mentioned, your grandma, mom, grandparents. Where was your dad in your story growing up?
So for me, my story is that I was able to meet my dad when I was 18.
Mm.
So I don't. There's pictures that I have seen pictures of when I was like a baby and him holding me, but in terms of my mental recollection, it was meeting him when I was 18, and I think even that story is extremely unique because as a senior, my basketball coach, Ken Smith, who also played a vital role in my development, he asked me as a senior that, hey, can you mentor some of the freshmen? So I was mentoring Kevin Moses, and just being a senior with the freshmen, just, when I see him in the hallways, and then I got to meet his dad and everything like that. So later in the year, I'm walking into the gym and he's in there with his dad, and I come in with my mom. And so my mom is like, Kevin, and he's like, Angela. And then my mom had me when she was 20, when she was a student. And her and Kevin's dad, rest in peace, who he just Kevin Moses, it's Kevin Moses, and his dad's Kevin Moses Sr. Kevin Moses Sr. recently just passed away. So but he was at school when my mom was at school and my dad was at school. They all went to college together. My mom, they were like, I remember when your mom was pregnant with you at school, type of experience. And he said, so wait, so you're Glenn's son? And he's like, and he asked me, do I, communicate with my dad? I was like, no, we don't really have a relationship. And he was like, I talked to your dad last week. And so, because they were friends, and they were like friends in college, and through this whole time, and he didn't even know like that I was that same person, Lil Brandon from Southern Connecticut State University. So he said, so he made some phone calls, and he came and connected me, gave him the phone number, so then I was able to, reconnect with my dad. And then the spring semester of my spring semester of my freshman year of college, my dad happened to be in Atlanta while I was there, and he stopped by the campus. And so that was the first time that I met my dad when I was 18. And to this day, we have a really good relationship. Actually, I probably need to respond to the text message that he sent me, as well as, we're Cowboy fans. We're season ticket holders to the Cowboys fans. I know
No, that's great.
But we have the season tickets. When he got married, I was in the wedding, and we have a really good.
So God gave you just what I call an Isaiah 11:11, and that's the scripture says, "I'm a God of a second chance." That's what it means. Is he just for your dad, because it must have been hard not to have your dad when you were growing up, but you also you carry this. It's interesting when you not bitter, right? And you learn how to forgive or release, and you realize that this is a life I have. I need to step up and do what I need to do, versus waiting for that to be healed so you can move on. It seems like there was something going on in you, and not having your dad there to be in your life, that it didn't make you bitter. Is that true?
I would agree. Yeah, I think so. I think I was fortunate. My mom did a great job of the opportunities and the love that she gave me. And I was able to have mentors, in my life, especially once I got to like high school, that really paved the way and poured into me to help me become the man that I am today.
I mean, it's mentoring is, and it's really it's kind of like pre-adoption, right? But it's somebody who says, man, I see something in you and I want to do something. I want to be in your story. And that is like, that's an amazing thing. The mentoring programs that were started by the government, by the way, they didn't do so good, because if you say yes to a kid and say, hey, I want to help you, and you don't show up, man, that devastates that child. But, it's like when someone says, hey, I want to be a mentor, then it's the rest of your life. Because these kids have been promised and disappointed and promised and disappointed. And so if you're doing this because you feel guilty, don't do it. But if you're willing to invest in that boy or that girl, you're going to get a choice down the road to even adopt them. I mean, it's a powerful thing thing. So you actually have a mentoring ministry that actually came out of that whole organization came out of guys who did it to you. So who was like your one of the most influential mentors that you have, and what did he do?
I would say it's Dr. Terrell Hill. He's in Connecticut. He's been my mentor, I would say, since pretty much my freshman year of college, and he has poured into me. He's given me job opportunities, connected me to advice, guidance. Sometimes too, I think with most things in life, more is caught than taught. So he's definitely
That's
taught me
right.
a lot, but I've caught so much and said I'm going to carry and exude myself in the same way. I have my own little razzle dazzle because that's what we should all do. But it's like be
Yeah,
so reminded but so inspired to sketch your own path, right? And
that's
so
right.
you take aspects of that and like, okay, this is the type of man I want to be. Here's a little bit of that razzle dazzle of like just who I am as a person, and then pursue that with impeccable effort.
That's amazing. Well, it's kind of the way they how they make wine, a different vintage. They have, when Jesus says, "I'm the vine and you're the branches," they take a branch, to say a Cabernet, and they plug it in and they graft it in, and eventually that branch doesn't know that that's not the mama or that's not the source, right? But that grape takes on that vine takes on that flavor of what's in that branch. And so God makes us perfectly uniquely to what he's called us to do. And all it needs for a boy to become that man, become that influence, needs a Terrell Hill that says, "Hey, man, I see something in you. I want to help you," and then invest the time. And so, what's he a doctor of, by the way?
Say that again.
Dr. Terrell Hill, right? You had mentioned. What's he a doctor of?
He's doctor of philosophy and education.
Oh, that's awesome. See that's the difference. So he's still teaching today, or is he in?
He's a superintendent of Windsor Public Schools in Connecticut, and he's also a professor at University of Connecticut.
Gosh, that's such an amazing give back, especially in a day when there's so few fathers engaged across our culture. I mean, much of the craziness we have in our culture is because fathers aren't there. They don't know what to do, or they're distracted, but they're not there in the life of their children. And so when their identity is forming, there's not somebody there going, "Hey, man, I see this in you." And so tell me a couple of lessons that, he sewed into you that it now is producing this flavor out of your life into what you're doing.
Yeah, so I mean, there's so much there that I could say, but I would say I had the opportunity. He founded a school in Connecticut, and he hired me to be a educator in that school. And I think what's unique is that he had to build the school from scratch. So hire all the staff, put the systems and structures in place for it to flourish and be this amazing place for education, but also an amazing place for the adults to want to come to work, right? Because as the founding principle, but just in general, when you look at the landscape of education, teachers don't quit schools; they quit principals, right? And so
Come on.
it's when there's not strong leadership, people like I don't want to work here anymore, right? But he created a place that was full of diversity around the educators. When you are at a place where LBGT, Black, white, Asian are all coexisting in a way that's really special, where you see Black male science teachers or Black female science teachers and Black male math teachers, like just a place where every kid had somebody in the building. But again, a place where the adults love to come to work. Like even when you run into people now, they're like, man, that time at High School Link, that was what a time to be alive, right? Because it was just
Yeah.
such a special time. And so I'm sharing that because in my role outside of the Black Man Can, I'm the senior director of social emotional learning at the Urban Assembly. And over the last 18 months, I ran a department. 18 months ago, I ran a department that was me and two other people, so a total of three people. Over the last 18 months, we've scaled that department to be 28 people, right? And so, but it's almost like just thinking one that God's timing is never wrong. A righteous man's steps are ordered by the Lord, and I think about the fact that
Yeah.
I had that opportunity, one, to meet Dr. Terrell Hill, to become his mentee, and then to work for him at a school where he had to build up and scale this school. And then here I am, 10 years later in a similar position where I had to build up and scale a department. And I literally took step by step because I saw him do it. Right. And so it's almost like, and through there, it was like leadership development that I would get because I would go sit in his office and talk to him and listen and hear the things that he was doing and then watch him do it. And then here I am now in that same role. And so it's almost like that mentoring, there was like the mentoring of the guidance and what he gave me, but simultaneously, like I didn't know that I was actually also simultaneously being prepared to actually do something similar later on in my life.
Well, see, God has made everyone like this, but especially men, to be number one, word activated. So the words over you either unlock you to the destiny that God wants you to have, or they hinder you. The lack of positive words or blessing makes a man shrink in his life. But the other part that he's made man too, that's why when we read the Bible, for instance, it expands us. So when we put God's words over us, no matter what men's words have been negative against us, even positive, he takes the lid off and gives us so much more. The other part, the way men are made, is that we're made to first learn to copy and imitate and follow our dads, right? And if your dad isn't close and you have a mentor there, you begin, because we learn by, it's like our fathers and our mentors are our first Instagram posts. And so if we don't have any reels, a boy, he'll look to culture to get his name and he'll get screwed up because they're just most, it's interesting. Social media was started by a guy who couldn't get a date. Facebook. So I couldn't get girls to like me. So he created a platform for that to happen. Right. And so in the midst of all that, here a guy comes in your life and you get to watch the how-to Instagram reels of this amazing Dr. Hill. And it gets in you as a man. And then when you have this opportunity down the road, you go, I know how to do that. I've seen it done. It's like, when you can, feed a man for, that you said something just so true, more really is caught than taught. And so when you position your teaching of men and equipping them in Black Man Can, when they say, well, if look the way this guy's doing this, that's powerful. It can change a boy into a man. It can change a gangster into somebody who changes life. Right.
Absolutely.
We just you got to change that. You got to change the reels. Right. A lot of those young Black boys and men, they got the worst reels. They've been watching the wrong reel. And all of a sudden it's about this, it's about that. And I'm a victim. I can't get out of this. Right. This is the same across every nation, tribe, and tongue. Right. Men are stuck today because they've watched the wrong video reels. They don't have a YouTube on many of their dads, right? My dad never showed me that, but that's how we learn, right? We go to YouTube and go, how do I fix my carburetor? Well, there's, Bubba Gump somewhere in South Carolina. He's got a whole channel on how to do that. But you've created this beautiful place where It's okay to succeed. You can do it. And matter of fact, underneath all this, you got God, kind of pushing this forward for the sake of. And the other thing I want to say for these men is that I really believe that you know a lot of people think that the church is a sacred place and the work environment is a secular place. The problem is the Bible doesn't say that. The Bible actually says it's all supposed to be sacred. What you do in your life, you can be a mechanic. Well, there's a way to be a mechanic where God's presence can be upon you in the way you do your work. And that's as much of a holy calling and vocation as it is to stand up and build a church at 10,000. And so many men have seen themselves, well, I'm not one of those guys, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yet, God's made us all to be with him and to build something because of what you're doing. You're able to serve every church. You're able to serve every business, every place. Do you see it that way too?
Yeah, I mean, I think I strive to be able to communicate to all communities and all people, men of all ages. I have the focus with the Black Men Can on Black men and boys, but even through work that I do outside of the Black Men Can, sometimes um, so I read a lot of research. I'm a graduate, a doctoral student. So I'm always reading research, and I read a lot of research, and then I think through how to communicate what research is saying in a clear and concise way, because I think to all people, because I'm slightly in the business, or all the way in the business of doing the work that can change hearts and minds.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
um, Sometimes we allow narratives, images, sound bites to become device. They allow us to become divisive and erode the hallmark of democracy and the hallmark of what makes our communities really powerful, and that's community. And so I'm just constantly thinking about that and how I can do that more effectively, because I think when we are able to work together, it allows for all our communities to thrive, and that's what we all deserve, to live and play in communities where we are working together towards common values that do not oppress any group of people, but only move us forward.
Yeah. No, you can't, Jesus was a great example of, I can hang out with anybody and love anybody. You didn't have to be in the club to get his time. And, that's because it's probably the worst example of, Christendom is when we get superior, or any group. When you get superior, then you have this down look on everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of, well, no, I'm just as broken as you.
Yeah.
Let me share a little bit about my story about how this came, which is it's just profound. Well, we also are just getting ready for the Super Bowl. So, I mean, you got any predictions here? We got is the hurt going to put the hurt on the Mahomes, or is Mahomes going to put the hurt on Mr. Hurt?
Ed, as I think about it, I'm a Cowboys fan, so therefore, I don't really have any real skin in the game. So there's a few things I think about. One is I'm excited to see two Black quarterbacks in the Super Bowl, which is the first time that it's ever happening.
That is incredibly powerful.
Something to celebrate. So to see, no matter what, a Black quarterback, knowing the trials and tribulations that Black men and
That's right.
playing that position specifically have had to deal with over time. So I'm happy to celebrate and salute whoever wins, because I know what it represents. If I had
That's
to
right.
choose one that I'm maybe rooting for just a little bit more than the other, it might be Jalen Hurts. And even though that's the rival in the NFC East, I think when you look at Jalen Hurts' story, and I kind of been following him since a little bit, probably almost high school, like because he was one of the top recruits at quarterback position, goes to Alabama, really doing a great job at Alabama, then gets pulled in the championship game, uh, stays at Alabama for the year, even after getting pulled, then transfers to Oklahoma, gets to the Heisman stage while at Oklahoma, gets to the league, people are already doubting him, doesn't think that he can be, the quarterback that can get a team to a Super Bowl. And here he is.
There he
They
is.
he has a all his lead agent is a Black woman, but his whole team around him is all women, and what that represents. So I think that when you take these different factors, one, again, whoever wins, I'll be happy. If you had to give one who I might be rooting for just a little bit more, it might be Jalen Hurts, because I think that's it. Like I thought about I watched the Kurt Warner movie, right? And so when you
Yes.
think about like this, how that story, which I didn't even know until I saw the movie, like I didn't know that was like his journey. Like you're Jalen Hurts, you have something that could be similar, which is like, look at this journey of this man, the journey of this Black man, to get to the highest heights possible in NFL, and win that Super Bowl. That automatically puts you in a position to be a Hall of Famer. There, and like, so let's say he wins another one. Let's just say that happens. I hope the Cowboys would win before them, but let's say he wins another one. There's no quarterback that has two Super Bowls that's not in the Hall of Fame. No matter what their other
Oh,
stats, if you
yeah.
have two Super Bowls, you are a Hall of Fame
You are
quarterback.
in the Hall of Fame, baby. I
So I
know.
think,
And the other thing that I appreciate the most about both of them, they're just tremendous athletes, but they both walk with God. They're men, they're kind, they're not superior. And they're such great examples of what men are supposed to be. And they both have had to come through the twists and turns of being a Black man, which is hard, and I my best friend in life, and we met on a high school football field, and I was my first year in the pros, and he was at Stanford, and we ran a race, and he looked at me and goes, "You're the first white boy to ever beat me." So we ran again, and I said, "You're the first Black man to ever beat me," and we became best friends. That's Brian Holloway, just one of the most amazing men. And he told me he was on an airplane and sitting in first class going somewhere. And there was a man in the seat with a little kid who was acting up, and saw Brian and just gave that look of kind of that, racist, you don't have to even mention the word. And Brian knew, and he realized, this guy was just kept turning around and scoffing at him. So Brian learned, in his life, man, I'm just going to bless him. And so they're getting ready to get off the plane, and he sees how bad it is. And so Brian reaches in and grabs some cash and says, "Hey, why don't you take your son and give him some money, and take him out, and because I see you didn't have any diapers, and so here, and I just want to bless you." So he goes off the plane and starts screaming that this guy in first class stole his wallet. So they call security and everything. He comes in, Brian walks out, and he goes, "No, I actually put money in his pocket. If you check his pocket out, I gave him his money. I didn't steal his wallet." And he walked away. I talked to him about it. He said, no matter where you go, you have to be gracious, loving, because of what Christ has done for you as a man. He said that I'm able to do that because of that. I could go to the other side. And I know you've had to face so many things, doing, what's been one of your secrets in your life, or what have you learned on how to deal with just the affront of that God's made you a certain way perfectly for his purposes, but to not get bitter?
Mm, that's a really great question. I think um, I've really taken time to develop my social emotional skills, which I think allowed for me to navigate the of frustration that can come from being a black man in America. And through that, it helps me think about the optimism that I have, but also thinking about the contributions I can make to try and make it a better place for my fellow brothers and those that will come after me.
Mm, that's
So
brilliant.
yeah, I think there's you get all the Tyree Nichols and of the world. You see these things constantly, and it I try to make sure that it just doesn't harden me, and that I can uh, I still know that any day it could also be me, but also um, thinking about what I as even with that, just thinking about the contributions I can continue to make. I'm not sure what walk by faith and not by sight. I think that that's something I think I try not to lean on my own understanding sometimes as well. So, I think just having that spiritual side for me has allowed for me to navigate the frustration that can come from being a black man in America and knowing that there's continued systemic racism and barriers and glass ceilings that I'll have to break through, and that many of my fellow brothers, men who look just like me, have to continue to break through. Just even think about what we just talked about, the fact that it's 2023 and we're having the first two black quarterbacks to be in the Super Bowl,
That's
and this
right. That's right,
Super Bowl.
brother.
This is like Super Bowl 55, I think. So think about 55 Super Bowls, right?
Well,
For
it's
that to
55 in the Bible for grace. So there's shouts of grace, grace at this Super Bowl.
yeah.
Yeah, no, that's so. So, do you think that America is uh, is still systemically racist, or do you think that it's evolved and it's getting better? I mean, from your view of, because here's the one challenge that we all have is where we get our news from frames our worldview.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of opinions that are coming from the news organizations about what they believe,
Mm-hmm.
right? But I don't see I don't see very many people that are actually making a difference communicating about it. I was just interested to see how you saw it when you're mentoring, you got your organization, Black Man Can. How would
Yeah.
you frame what you see, and how are we doing? How are we doing in America right now?
America, um, liberty, freedom, um, justice, if you will, right? These are all, or let me back it up. I'm gonna say this. I did a professional development yesterday, and so part of what I try to do is again, is I try to story tell.
Mm,
And so I put up an image, and it was of a knitted hat, but it had lots of different holes in it, right? So, and the thinking is, people look at the image like, what was this? What was the intention of this object? We're like, oh, it's a hat, to keep you warm. It had all these intentions, right? But it has these gaping holes, right? And so then people talk about it, and then what do I show right after that? I show the Constitution,
mm,
right? And so the Constitution had intent to have freedom, to have liberty, to have justice for all people. But guess what? It had gaping holes uh,
mm,
in its intent. So what also is a part of that when we talk about the Constitution is that sexism, racism, classism was a part of the intention of creating the Constitution for the United States of America. So that means that in our founding, these things exist. And so they still exist today because that is part of the core of what the country was founded upon. And we work diligently in terms of the work that many people are doing to try and eradicate and dismantle to bring that hat that I'm talking about, to
Right.
make it look like the hat that you need to protect you in the winter weather. But there's so many things that we could use as example of that when we continue to try to take time to build coalition, to build community, and to work together to continue to try to fill those holes. But those holes are still there, and they may forever be there. And that gives us the work ahead that we must do in order to form a more perfect union, and for ourselves currently in the state that we live in, but also thinking about the generations that come behind us, so that they can have that perfectly knitted hat that will allow for them to live the life that they deserve and what the country stands for.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I love that. Because use kind of what we do in our ministry. I help men become the husbands and fathers many of them didn't ever have or see. And so when you teach a man how to do something and it changes, and God's answer to the biggest holes we have in our culture is fatherlessness. It's a gigantic gaping wound that it's affecting every part of our culture.
Mm-hmm.
And in the Constitution, it had a culture and it had its strengths and weaknesses back when it was written, based on they didn't know what they didn't know, right? They only knew what they knew at the time, and they created this. They didn't have foresight to fix every single problem. That becomes on us to take that and change and become an answer instead of a problem. And it's for God, God's answer seems to always in history always rest on the histories of the fathers that are leading in that culture. Not that mothers are already there, not separating moms out, but because we already got moms in. I don't think we'd have the National Football League if it wasn't for single mamas. They're in, baby. They're amazing. Moms are amazing what they do in their life, and it's a tough deal. But what would happen if we could raise up and really equip men to be the fathers that their children needed?
Absolutely. I think one of the quotes that people like to, it's not my favorite quote, but I've learned how I want to talk about the quote. But one of the quotes that people often quote a lot, especially around mentoring, is that, Frederick Douglass, it's easier to build children than to repair broken men. But I just want to think about what you just said, and what how we have to look at that quote is that there might be some truth there. However, it doesn't mean men were left to be broken.
That's right.
And so we have to think about how are we going to repair our broken men, because inside of that broken man is that little boy.
That's it, right.
And so we have to take the steps to create the communities for us, as you said, in the work that you're doing, so that we can repair men. And the thing is that obviously I spend a lot of time with Black men and boys, but when you think about the patriarchy that was part of the founding of our country, right, and how we treat men and how society we've created what it means to be a man, which is focused on, I want to say, more of the aggressive forms of masculinity, if you will, and not allowing us to embrace the softer ones of empathy and compassion and love, right? Because in order to be a comprehensive man, you must be able to display the full range of human emotions in order to be the father that you need to be the husband that you need to be.
Come on.
requires you to have full range of it. If you sit in just one aspect of masculinity, you won't be able to treat and love and have the house and build up your son, your daughter, and your family to be what it needs to be. And so I think you just spoke to that, and that's so important for us to, again, not leave men broken, continue to do this work of mentoring and building up the next generation. But there's so many men just crying out to just be loved, just to get a hug. I think sometimes that it's unfortunate that sometimes the only place where it's okay for a man, not just a black man too, right? Because that's my focus. But when you start really digging into it, you start to see the white men, Latino men, everybody,
They're all the
people
same, man.
dealing with some of the same issues, right? And it's unfortunate that even across that spectrum, sometimes the only place it's okay for that man to cry is on an athletic field or at a funeral. If you're not crying in one of those two spaces, it is not okay, right? And therein lies a problem that we must eradicate, right? So that it's okay to cry and feel the full range of human emotions at any point time, no matter what is happening, whether it's tears of joy or tears of sorrow.
Yeah, being a healthy man. I mean, the Bible says it this way. I love this promise in 1 Corinthians 15, 49 says, just as we've been born in the image of the man of dust, we will be transformed into the image of the man of heaven. The man of dust was Adam. We were all born broken, separated. Broken dads, good dads, we're still born broken. We're men of dust, where we get our identity from what we do. God's plan is to make us and transform us, no matter how broken we started, into the image of the man of heaven. That's Jesus. And Jesus was compassionate, loving, full of the Spirit. He was able to do all those things in his life as a son, and to model for us what a man is. So a man's not just this masculine dude that, a lot of that stuff, by the way, is, I remember playing in National Football League, is that I could always beat the guy who tried to outman me by being a badass or etc. And the way I would do it is I would get personal with him and talk to him about what really goes on in his life. The biggest bully is the guy who's most afraid. And so,
Yeah.
you connect them and ask them questions and get in their life. And it's just amazing what happens to them when they finally let you in and they realize, because sometimes people think education is about getting superior so you don't make mistakes. Well, we know what to do, and then many times we just don't do it. There's so many things in our life where we need another mentor. We need another guy who's walked that line and says, man, listen, I was where you were in a lot of ways, and I learned these things. I know this can help you. Let me help you. And that's what I see in you that's really powerful. And plus you have a brilliant mind, but you had to work to fill it up. Right? And so, that's powerful. Well, I've just so enjoyed our time on the Man of Honor podcast, because you are really a man of honor. And what I mean by that is when God honors somebody by giving him something he does that he can't do without God in his life. Then you do something and you can look back and go, wow, I'm going to give you praise for that.
Yeah.
Right. And I see that in you. I see that humility too, because humility isn't about just taking the low road. That's a religious version. Humility, true biblical humility, is to be the man that God says you are. Even Moses wrote that Moses was the most humble man in the whole earth. Now, how do you write that about yourself?
Yeah.
Unless you really have learned that, no, I know who he is. And I know who I am, a stuttering leader that can't even speak in public, that's called to deliver 2 million people out of bondage.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So what's coming up that we can include? You got what, any books on the horizon, things you're doing that we can kind of put there in the bio for people to watch this?
I have a children's book. It's called My First Tie. So you can get that on the blackmancan.com. We also have our affirmation cards on the blackmancan.com. So those are just two things we're working on, restocking all the inventory, but those two things are definitely in stock. And right now we're in our plan of really working to secure some different partners for some of our events and programming that we want to do. So I'm excited about some of that work. So I don't have any dates yet of anything because we're in the planning and strategy phase, but I'm excited for some of the amazing things that we're going to do this year. And I definitely am going to keep you posted so you can share with your and I definitely I would love to get out to see you. We got to meet. I think it's great to do these things online, but I have to come out.
I would love to get some time with you because and partner up, because we have the same mission. We're there to help broken boys become the man that God's called them to be. And they just don't know it. They just think they're stuck, or they say that'll never happen for me. And what I say is, no, it will. We can't do it for you. We know someone who will empower you, but we'll give you tools to connect to that so that you can really be that man. Because when you heal the fatherless wound that these boys carry, and they begin to go, I can do that. Mm-hmm. It changes their whole persona.
I agree.
Yeah. And that's what's in you. And that's just powerful. So anyway, just kind of in closing, I want you to give your best blessing to the men that are watching right now. Just whatever comes out of you. And, because it's more than just for Black men. You carry something for men, right? But God's given you a fishing hole, which is awesome, which I don't know very many people. I don't know of anybody that has, besides one of my some of my friends that I have that are preaching in churches and stuff, but you have a tremendous reach. Tony Evans, great friend of mine. Tony's a preaching machine. But he has done incredible work in the community there in Texas. And for a Black man who didn't have dads in their life, who felt stuck, and he connected them to a father that can get you unstuck. So why don't you give your best blessing to guys that are watching? Go for it.
Yeah. Dr. Benjamin Elijah May, sixth president of Morehouse College, says that every man and woman was put on this earth to do something unique and something distinctive. If he or she does not do it, it will never be done. So first, for all the men that are watching, there's something unique and something distinctive that you're supposed to do. If you don't do it, it will never be done. Next, God gives us ideas. I call ideas spiritual children that are seated inside of us. But what you must know is that because you are supposed to do something unique and something distinctive, he has put people around you. He has put the supports around you. You must make sure you access those supports so you can manifest those ideas into reality so that you can do the thing that is unique and distinctive. And while you're on the process to do that, you must know that a righteous man's steps are ordered by the Lord. You must walk by faith and not by sight, and faith without work is dead. So if you put this all together, you know that you are designed to do what you're supposed to do. God has given you the idea. You are to be the vessel for that idea to birth that into the world, but you must walk by faith and not by sight. If you, as a matter of fact, if you try to see where you're supposed to go because of the order of steps he has you walking in, you probably would say you don't want those blessings. So what you need is continue to make sure that you walk by faith and not by sight, and continue to do the work, because faith without work is dead. So when you praise him and you thank him, the blessings come flowing down, so that unique and distinctive thing that you're supposed to do will manifest into the world so you can change the world. Or one thing I like to say is to define yourself so you can redefine the world. That's my message.
Woo! Go, baby. Well, if you've been watching the Man of Honor podcast, you've just got a treat and got to meet Brandon Frame, who, in a real way, he's framing a whole future for men who feel invisible. You can do all things through Christ who strengthens you, but you need some mentors. You need some guys around you, and he is a wonderful mentor and leader. And so if you're not already signed up, get on the Black Man Can on Instagram and go to his website, see what he's doing, pray for him, give to him, support him. He's a man of honor who God has raised up for such a time as this. God bless you guys. And if you check out the bio, we got some free gifts in there for you. And if you want to become part of our Men of Honor training camp, we are, as of January 1st, we're giving everything away that we've written and done to men for free. That's one of those things where the Lord just said, "Hey, Ed, I want you to do this." I said, "All right, you're the boss." And so our training's there for you as well. We'd love to help you every way we can. So bless you guys. Remember, it's never too late for God to turn your story around and help you become the man, husband, and father He's created you to be. God bless you.